monitoring this nationwide shutdown by the EFF. And as we also spoke, they are obviously, unhappy about a number of issues in the country, socio-economic issues, also obviously saying that load shedding needs to come to an end. But interestingly, they maintain their call for President Cyril Ramaphosa to step down and be removed as the president. Let's get more analysis for you now. Let's bring in Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, who joins me now via Zoom. Dr. Breakfast, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, we know, of course, that this protest is a couple of hours in their planned shutdown. Will this protest have the kind of desired effect the EFF envisioned?
Yeah, I think that is a $1 million question, because in some places, for instance, down here in Gqeberha, I think it's business as usual. Most places are open today, as opposed to what I anticipated. So I think your question is something that I've been grappling with in terms of whether the EFF has achieved its intended objective. But at the same time, I think there was a case to be made, though, in terms of the social challenges that we have of inequality, poverty, unemployment. I mean, a lot of people who are on the margins of the economy have been bearing the brunt of unevenness. So I think it was good for them to take a stand against social injustice. I'm not sure about the other demand that they are putting forward, that the president must resign. I'm not speaking on behalf of him, but I think in a democracy, you can only dislodge those who are at the helm of power via electoral means, or you can use parliament. I mean, there are constitutional provisions on how to recall the president, but not sneak in that issue through the back door.
Let's talk then about, those two issues that you've mentioned. Fundamentally, of course, we know that this protest does signal a disconnect with government and the South African citizen. And as you said, the socio-economic problems are, some of the things that it's good for a political party like the EFF to raise, for instance. Just your observations then in terms of how President Cyril Ramaphosa, and in fact, how the security cluster have handled this matter ahead of the protest and, of course, during the protest, what we are seeing currently.
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings on that score, largely because, there's this concept of a social contract in a democracy, meaning that, the citizens, they vote for their leaders. In return, those who are at the helm of power have to provide a security. So government has that commitment, and I think by responding the way they have, they were honoring that commitment of the social contract. But also, I think one of the findings of that report of Professor Sandy Africa and that one of Sydney Mufamadi was that there were some gaps in the security architecture. So I think government has tried its level best in terms of bridging those gaps. No wonder they have been very alert of late. But the other issue, Unat, is that you and I were not privy to the intelligence information that is at the disposal of government. We don't know whether there were any security threats that were intercepted that made them to be on standby and also to be ready for any threat that could pose danger to our country.
You raise a very important point, Dr. Breakfast. In fact, I am going to pose that question to our security analyst when we speak to him later. But Dr. Breakfast, I'd like you to pause just for a few minutes. Now, we're going to wrap up our conversation with Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, who is with us still via Zoom. Dr. Breakfast, I want us to touch a little bit on the scenes that we saw happening in Durban. They are concerning, particularly if you recall that, we did have an interview with Mr. Dlamini on the SABC channel where he said it was disingenuous to compare the planned national shutdown to the July 2021, riots or unrest. Are we seeing some kind of hesitance or heavy-handedness from police because of that comparison, possibly?
Yeah, I think the state has framed this in a very interesting way, in the sense that they framed it before it took place as a security threat. They've securitized the protest to the extent that has created a scope for a conflict. And I think there is a need for SABC to institutionalize conflict management, because I think one of their challenges is crowd management, and also how to disperse the protesters. I think that seems to be a challenge with them.
Dr. Breakfast, thank you so much for your analysis. Really do appreciate you staying with us for the hour. Of course, we've been speaking to various journalists, of course, also across the country in terms of giving us updates in terms of what, we are seeing in as far as this protest is concerned. We're going to take a quick break now. We'll be back at the top of the hour where we will continue to give you rolling coverage of this nationwide strike.